Well, hello, my beautiful friend. From my sacred mess to yours, welcome to Hot Mess Mystic, the podcast for empaths, spiritual seekers, witches, and light workers who are opening up to the whispers of spirit, doing the work, and occasionally falling apart in the process. I'm your host, Cassie, crystal hoarder, energy healer, and queen of keeping the chaos under a spell. Here we talk shadow work, chakras, moon moods, spiritual glow-ups, and everything in between, all with a side of sass and a lot of heart. So grab your tea, light a candle, and let's dive into the magic and the mess of becoming your truest self. This week, we're talking about healing emotional wounds and how it's less like a one-time breakthrough and more like doing the dishes. Yep. You wash a sink full, feel good about it, and then someone brings down a mug from 2008 and a plate with melted cheese baked on like regret. Healing is repetitive. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're doing it realistically. And first, I want to talk about my personal messy moment. A few years ago, I got married. And I spent a few years planning the wedding. It was beautiful. Everybody had fun. And it was just an amazing day. It was everything that I had wanted it to be and more. However, at the end of the night, I was, getting ready for bed, took off my dress, cleaned my face. And I got into bed and I remember thinking, now what? Like, it's over. What's the next milestone? There's nothing else really to look forward to. And that shook me. I was really sad. I hadn't even gone on my honeymoon yet. And I was already thinking, this is the end. Nothing else matters. I mean, it's silly to think about now, but it's true. When you graduate, there's been a lot of graduations going on right now. When you graduate, it's like, ooh, I made this milestone. I graduated high school and it's amazing. And then you're like, fuck, now what? Okay, do I go to college? Do I get a job? Some of us are already working, so it's that thing, but do I move out of the house? You're so excited to be an adult and have all these possibilities happen, but the reality of it is when you get there, you're like, this is not what I thought it was going to be, which is humbling, which we all need a little bit of humbling. But so, I'm sitting there, post-wedding, literally my wedding night, and I'm like, oh, what now, and in the movie with Ashton Kutcher and Brittany Murphy, she does the same thing. She starts crying and she's like, now what? I'll never have another wedding day. And I could totally relate because that was me. And not thinking anything of it, I'm like, well, that's just stupid, it's just, it was just a great day. And, there's other things to look forward to, right? There has to be. I was too exhausted to think any more about it at that point. So I went to sleep. We went on our honeymoon. It was great. It was fun. It was relaxing. And come home and I went back to work. Everything went back to normal. I had a house. I had a career. Everything was fine. Well, little by little, my body started to break down. One day I was playing with my dog and on our bed and my rib cracked and fractured. And I was like, oh my God, I thought I had just pulled a muscle because it was painful, but it wasn't so painful. Well, 24 hours goes by and I'm trying to relieve myself in the morning and I can't even get a deep breath in. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't bend over to even clean myself. It was seriously a crisis. And I was like, oh my God, my husband's going to have to wipe my ass. And he did, begrudgingly, but because he loved me, he did it. And I'm very grateful for him. But he had to drive me to the ER in my state. And I was like, if I pass out, because I couldn't breathe at that point, and every turn twist with the car was excruciating. If I pass out, you just take me to the hospital. You don't even stop. Don't worry about me. Just focus on driving. And I'm telling him to stay calm and everything as I'm in this excruciating pain, right? So we get to the hospital. I ended up getting admitted. I was there for almost a week. I ended up going home on medications and with 24-hour oxygen. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a trained and licensed physical therapist assistant. So I was doing physical therapy on a home health basis with patients who were in critical care or needed to get back to a functional living space. So I'm going to these people's houses with oxygen attached to my body, and that was really embarrassing. But at the same time, I think it was kind of relatable too, because they're like, oh, well, everybody goes through things. And it didn't really slow me down. It did make me feel more self-conscious, obviously, because I was in my early 30s at the time. And nobody wants to be on oxygen, when they're young, but it was necessary. I didn't have a choice. And if I didn't have my oxygen, I wouldn't be able to walk around or do anything. So I was on oxygen for about a year before it corrected, which is really interesting because it took about a year for that to happen, for that trifecta of things to come together to take me out. So yeah, I was on oxygen and my body just kept breaking down little by little because the culmination of my job, the expectations of the companies that I worked for, because it was a few, the demands that my job placed on me, and the expectations I held of myself, were all weighing down on me, and just all of this negative emotion, all of this negative energy was just pressing on me. And my body could not handle the amount of negativity that was coming at me, and it started to break down and continued to break down. I ended up in a very deep depression right before COVID hit. I ended up having to take a medical leave of absence twice from my jobs because of multiple surgeries, a deep depression, and two life-changing surgeries, actually. One was a hysterectomy, and the other was a gastric bypass surgery. I had to take a medical leave of absence from my jobs to try to heal in a way. And I remember being at home, not doing anything. And at the lowest point, I thought, if I just went away, if I was no longer here, nobody would have to worry about me. And they could move on with their life. My husband could move on, maybe find someone who's a little bit more stable and loving, not that I'm not loving, but, maybe he could find someone that would be better suited for him and happier and enrich his life instead of, be a sour, depressing entity to be around every day. And it was at that point I was like, hell no, we won't go. I'm a fire sign, so I wanted to fight, partially for other people, but more so than anything for myself, because I really believed that there was more that I was meant to do. I just didn't know what it was. And if I took myself out or I left this physical plane, I wouldn't be able to do that. So I was like, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm going to do whatever I can to get better. I went to my doctor and I admitted for the very first time in my entire life, which this has been multiple times, admitted for the very first time in my life that I am depressed and I'm having a bit of anxiety, especially with, COVID going on and everything. Who knows, the media really just ballooned that shit to the point that it was consuming body and soul, not just for me, but for many people on this planet. And I feel bad for the people that lost their lives due to it, because it was completely unnecessary for people to lose their lives in that way. However, I truly believe this, and I'm sorry if this offends you. I'm sorry if this makes you feel like shit, or you're dealing with a lot of grief because you lost so many loved ones due to COVID, and I mourn the losses that were taken. Nature has a way of balancing itself out regardless of what we want. And whether or not you believe COVID was man-made or not, this did create a semblance of balance in the world, because it facilitated such a major shift in our society, which is we're still working that out right now. We're still trying to figure that all out. With COVID and the president, shutting things down and creating that boundary on our behalf really helped free the guilt or the expectation or the obligation I felt every day of needing to go back to work, because I was disappointing my boss, or I missed my patients, or I was disappointing my patient, or disappointing my husband, or, whatever the case may be. It gave me the space to really heal and permission, unwritten permission, that it was okay to do that. And I am so grateful for that time, not for the loss that we suffered, but for the time that I gained. And I'm sorry, I really am sorry if this offends you. It's not meant to offend you. I'm just telling you my story and how I felt about the situation, and no one's life is more important than another's. And I honor every single life that was lost due to this unfortunate situation. But I'm also grateful for the balance that COVID created in my life. And that might sound really selfish, and I apologize again about that. I can't say how sorry I am if this is offending you, but it's not meant to offend you. I'm just telling you my story. So I chose to fight. I went to my doctor. I got on medication, and then I was like, the doctors just wanted to keep upping my medication or giving me more medicines. And I'm like, it's not about a fucking pill, okay? The pill is just to help me get over the hump. I'm going to have to do something different in order to really get to the deep root of everything and figure out how to transmute it, work through it, process it, and make sense of it all so that I can learn from it and move forward. So I started seeing a counselor, and then I also started seeing a counselor, and then I started seeing an energy healer as well. And during that time, I had all three things going. And then I started getting into crystals and wanting to acknowledge that side of me that I had pushed away so long ago. And I just blossomed in that environment. I love crystals. I am a crystal hoarder. I am not kidding. I have 4 cabinets full of crystals, among other things. They're everywhere in my house, and I have a crystal shop, obviously, Divine Journey Boutique. But I started getting into crystals again and witchcraft, and I don't know if I like calling it witchcraft, but it's honoring. To me, it's not witchcraft. It's honoring the energy, accessing the energy, and recognizing that we are all connected. Every living being on this planet is connected and can communicate with one another, whether they're right next to each other or miles apart. And I really love that idea or that belief because it feels like home. It feels comforting. It feels reassuring, and things that you feel like you have no control. And, control is really an illusion, but at the same time, you have choice. You can make the choice that makes sense for you. And what determines whether or not it's good or bad is the meaning that you put behind it, is the intention that you put behind it. So my intention was to get better, and I wanted to focus on healing and getting better and reclaiming my power and letting go of all of the fear, all of the lack, all of the insecurity, all of the negativity and all of the expectations and obligations and all those other things that I was putting on myself. And I wanted to focus on healing, and that's what I did. And I healed. It took about a year. I got better, right? But my dad, who I love dearly, was really struggling with his job, and he needed help. And I am a helper. I'm a people pleaser. I'm not going to lie. That is a default. That is a karmic pattern that I need to break. But he needed help, and I wanted to help, and I had time, and I was feeling good, and I was like, I can help him, and I told him it was going to be temporary. We established the boundaries that if this affects our relationship in any way, this is going to end. So I went and I helped him. 4 years later, I started feeling, it was about 2 years in, just before my dad retired, I was like, I need to leave. I can't stay here. This isn't working anymore. I've come and I did what I was meant to do. I got things back on track for their company, and it was time for me to move on. But I didn't really know where to go. I didn't know what the next step was. We didn't have a safety net or anything like that. So it was very up in the air. And the reality is, yes, the environment was toxic, and it was a negative impact on my life, but it was easy. It was flexible, and the expectations people had of me was fairly low, but I had a higher expectation of myself, which was totally not incongruent with me or my energy. And that should have been the first red flag. I haven't really thought about it as being as incongruent with my energy until right now, but it really was. So I stayed for another 2 years, hoping things were going to get better, hoping people were going to like see what I offer, what I was offering, and the capabilities and the potential that I could help them reach with their company. But I wanted to make sure it was an even exchange, and it never was. It was never balanced. There was an illusion of balance in it, and I had to convince my husband, before I even convince my husband, I had to convince myself that I had to leave because I felt my depression starting to creep back in. And, you know, when you think about doing the dishes, you wash the dishes and then you get that one frickin' thing that was in another room that you didn't know about. And here that person comes and drops it in the sink and you're like, motherfucker, I just what? Right? So as soon as I would feel good, like someone would bring another dish and I'd be like, oh, this was the conversation. It's so easy, Cassie. You can do whatever you want. You don't really have to, your job is easy. It's fine. And you get paid, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, you're right. It's fine. I'll just wash the dish and keep going. And then another dish. I'll just keep washing. But the dishes were starting to stack up faster than I could wash them. And I recognized that a lot quicker this time. Well, not a lot quicker. But I did recognize it before shit really hit the fan. And I had other issues that come up. So I left my job. After I convinced my husband that this was the right thing to do. And I didn't have any prospects on the horizon. But at the same time, right now it's 3 weeks since I left my job. And I'm still in this space of like, oh, fuck, what am I going to do? At the same time, Spirit's like, just be right now. And I'm not good at just being. I'm just going to be honest with you. I am not good at just being. But it's rejuvenating, right? It's relaxing. It's reassuring. It's all the things that you need to really start the process of healing. Is just acknowledge that there was a problem, or acknowledge that there is a problem and start to figure out what that is. And this new problem that reoccurred for me in taking this job and helping my father was people pleasing. And I continued to repeat that cycle every time I convinced myself to stay. Every time it was people pleasing, convince myself to stay, people pleasing, convince myself to stay. Before I gave my notice, I was like, you know what, fuck this. I am tired of pleasing these other people that don't see what I have to offer. They don't see my light. And I shouldn't need another person to see my light, right? Like, we all wish that. Some of us who are really good, we don't need that. Most people need other people to see their light. And that's also a lesson here too. Because why do I need someone to see my light? It's that people pleasing thing, and it's wanting to fit in. It's wanting to be accepted, right? You want someone else to see your value. But do you see your value? I want you to really ask yourself, do I see my own value? Is my value based on someone else's opinion or someone else's perception of my value? Aha, there's the kicker, right? Oh man, at this point, healing wasn't just about fixing myself. It was about reconnecting with who I was, my inner voice, my higher self, my soul. And I'm in that place right now. Things are very different. I'm not the same person I was when I left the medical field. I am not the same person I was when I started working at my last job. And right now everything is new. It's fresh. It's really interesting because it's this new precipice of where I need to go, what needs to happen. And, energy healing really is individual. It's unique and it's deeply energetic. And I decided when I was seeing the chakra healer, I was like, I need to learn more about this. So I started to do some trainings and get certifications and dabbling into doing a lot of research and learning about crystal healing. And that was really the one thing that got me through the depression on top of having the medications and stuff, because there was a point where I was like, oh, I have no feelings. I have no emotions. Like, I used to watch, those soldier homecoming movies. Oh my God, they just kill me every time. I just bawl like a baby. They're just so beautiful. And I was watching them while I was on antidepressants, and I was like, damn, I'm not even crying. I'm not eliciting like any type of feeling, any emotion, just a oh type of thing. And I was like very neutral. And I'm like, whoa, that needs to change. And that was interesting because I picked up on that cue that, okay, where I need to be feeling these emotions, I'm not feeling these emotions. And I was okay feeling those emotions. Before, I didn't want to feel those emotions because those emotions at the time when I was in the deep depression, they overtook my entire being. They took over my entire personality. They took everything from me. Now it was like, oh, I really want to feel this. So when I started learning energy healing and, I started learning different crystal tools, my favorite is using crystal Vogels when I'm doing my energy healing work on clients. I use selenite. I do meditation. We do a chakra reading. I use tuning forks, and everything is very intuitive based. And even when I work on myself, I use selenite and shungite. Those are my two go-to things. And it's funny because selenite is white and shungite is black, right? But both are for purification, more so shungite, but selenite's very clearing and cleansing. And it's also a charger for crystals, right? I'm a huge fan of selenite. I have a selenite wand right here, and I use it almost every time I start feeling like poop. And it makes me feel better every single time. So, everyone's dish pile is different. Mine is fraught with shame and people pleasing. I wonder how those two go hand in hand. Anywho, so yeah, when I do my energy sessions on clients, I use all of those things, and I'm very intuitively guided to the person's energetic aura and their body and just their overall energy to try to find little things that are coming up, pain points, discontent. There's like this warm, buzzy feeling that I usually feel around certain areas, and that's usually where someone has a stuck emotion or something. But like the last person I worked on, she's a pretty young gal, and she said she was having issues with her boss. And I'm going through and I'm doing everything, and I was directed under the table. I usually never go under the table when I'm working on someone. That just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going under the table, and there's all this like very tight, almost controlling energy, and there's all these little, I'm gonna call them tentacles, and there are just so many of them, and I'm like, whoa, we need to cut cords. And I usually don't cut cords for other people because that's something they need to do for themselves. But if someone gives me permission to do them and I see that it's a necessary thing, I will say, do you give me permission to cut these cords? Because you have quite a few. And they were like really tight, and they were just pulling on her. And I was like, do you give me permission? She was like, yeah. And I could tell she was kind of like, what do you mean cords? This doesn't make sense to me because like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But at the same time, she gave me permission. So I was like, okay, we're going to cut these. And I had to borrow scissors from someone. I cleared them with my selenite. But I was like, I'm cutting, all these energy cords and there was just so many. It was so, and some were like thicker than others. And I was like, I'm going to have you sit up at the end, and we're going to have to do this all over again. And so I did her session. She sits up, and I start going through with my selenite, and I think I used shungite too, but more so the selenite and the scissors. And I was just cutting through, and I was just like wiping them away. Side note, whenever you are doing energy healing work, you better be having that intention that whatever you're releasing, whatever you're clearing is being released back into the earth, back into water. I don't want to say air because usually in that situation, when you're at an event, that air is circulating throughout the entire space, and you don't want all that shit in there. So you need to release that in water, go flush that in the toilet after the session's done so that it is being washed away, or have a jar of dirt like I do and just put your tools back in that dirt, because then the intention is there. If you're not doing that, you are not putting that energy in the right place that you're releasing and you're letting it float around to attach to other people, and that's not okay. That's my little side note. That's my little tangent. Moving on. So I have her sit up and she's like, whoa, this is insane. I feel so much better. And I'm like, wait, we're not done. And I'm like going through her back, and it was like crisscrossing her body. This energy was crisscrossing her body. So it was almost a shield, okay, on her back that was just siphoning off energy, or they were either siphoning energy off of her or she had attachments to other people. And I finally found out at the end that she had certain attachments to other people and the way they were doing things because they asked her for advice and they were not following her advice. And that was frustrating to her, which I totally get, you know. But you have to remember, people have free will, and even if you give them advice, it doesn't matter how good it is. If they're not ready to follow through on that, that's okay. That needs to be okay. It's not a disrespect to you. It's not, well, it shouldn't be. I can't speak for other people, but it's your choice to take that meaning and say, this is not a disrespect to me. This is not a devaluation of the advice and the offerings and the services that I gave them. It's just that they're not ready, and that's okay. They can come back and we can talk about it another time. You know, however you want to do it. If you don't want to ever talk about it again with them because they don't want to follow your advice, that's your choice. And that's okay too, right? So I'm clearing the rest of those cords, and I get down to her left side, and I was like, boom, there it is. And she was like, whoa, I felt that too. And it was crazy. She felt a lot better, and I reached out to her afterward to see how she was feeling. She said, I feel so good. Thank you so much. So that was amazing. I love helping people, but I also want to make sure that I'm working with people who understand that they have a choice. Okay. This is deep, impactful, restorative, regenerative work, energetic work. And if you don't have a certain belief in it, if you don't have the right intention going into it, then it's not going to work for you. It's just not. So I want you to make sure you have that understanding, okay? If your emotional dish pile feels like it's never ending, you don't have to scrub it alone. I offer chakra consultations where I can help you identify where your energy is stuck and give you a personalized crystal support blueprint, if you will, to start shifting things. However, if you'd rather DIY it, my downloadable crystal grids are like a little energetic dish pod, simple, intentional, and surprisingly powerful. They just won't clog your dishwasher, right? The links will be in the show notes, so if you want to check either one of those out, I highly recommend that you do. If not, that's okay too. I will appreciate either way. What do you do if you're in the middle of the mess, okay? Healing, like I said, is like doing the dishes. Every time you think you're done, another mess shows up. However, there's two things that you can do today to start making a shift, to start making a change in your life. The first thing is subscribe to this podcast, The Hot Mess Mystic, or another soul supporting podcast. Okay. The reason why is because you want to feed your intention and starve your fear. So if your intention is to heal and become the person that you want to be, then you have to starve your fear and you need to feed your intention. By starving your fear, you're no longer focusing on that. That is not your main focus. You might have little bubblings of like, oh, I don't know, like I am right now. Like, oh, what the fuck am I going to do? But at the same time, I always follow that up with, I know that what I'm doing is important and is going to make a big difference in the next 3 months, 6 months, 10 years, whatever the case may be. So even though those little fears and brain lies come up to say, hey, you suck, you're going to fuck shit up. You'll be like, I might fuck some shit up, but I'm going to do this anyways. And I'm going to do it with positivity and joy. And I'm going to learn every little step of the way. And I'm going to make sure that I do the right thing. And the right thing is not listen to yo ass. Okay. The second thing you can do, and this is really important, I really want you to understand. You can start a meditation practice that works for you. Meditation is all about forming a relationship with yourself, with your higher self, with your sacred team Okay? These things help support you in your daily life, and they're also feeding your intention. They're starving your fears. Okay? Because if you have so much positivity coming into your life, those fears, those insecurities, those discouragements, those disappointments, they're going to start shrinking. They're not going to be as prominent. And that's what you want, right? However, meditation does not mean you need to sit Indian style with your legs crossed and your arms up. You don't have to meditate that way. People meditate in different ways, just like we all learn in different ways. Honor what works for you. If that means you just take a walk out in nature and you're just being present, you're looking at the trees, the sky, the clouds, the sun, you're feeling that vitamin D soak deep into your skin and lovingly caress. The heat lovingly caresses your body and warms your bones, right? That is a form of meditation. I mean, just listening to that, didn't you just feel like, oh yeah, that's nice, right? If you like working in the garden and, you're pruning your plants and you're talking to them and you're giving them loving blah, blah, blahs, and like I do to my babies, I call them my plant babies. That's a form of meditation too. Or, if you're a little unfocused, I'm not unfocused, are you? If you're a little unfocused, guided meditations are great because they help you start to formulate, okay, this is the routine that you can go through. And then, there's been times where I've listened to guided meditations and they go off in one way and I'm like, shut up. I need to go over here. I need to do this. I need to do that. And I do that. Or you can sit with your legs crossed and with your arms up and Om, Om is the vibration that creates is peace. Om is a loving, peaceful, divinely created frequency. So when you access that, when you say that, it helps break up any of that shit. So if you're in a situation and someone's just coming at you from every angle and you're just like, ooh, I need to take a break. Maybe you have to pee. Wink, wink. You have to pee. So you go to the bathroom and you sit in that stall and you just, that will help you release all that anger, that frustration. And you'll come out of the bathroom feeling like $1,000,000 and people are like, were you just having sex in the bathroom? No, I was meditating. I don't know. Maybe they'll say that. I would. Okay, the main important thing is just to show up. So when you meditate, you're feeding your intention and starving your fear. And that's what we want to do. Progress isn't about staying clean, just like your dishes. Okay, they're going to be clean, then they're going to get dirty. It's about getting faster and more graceful at the cleanup. You hear me? Progress isn't about staying clean. It's not about being perfect. It's about getting faster and more graceful at the cleanup. Okay, so I want to just end this by reminding you, you're not behind, you're not broken, you're not failing. You're just doing the dishes of your emotional life, and that's holy work. Okay? Honor that. If this podcast really resonated with you, please subscribe, download, and review if this resonated with you, because every subscribe, every review helps me stay in the algorithm, helps me to reach new people who might need to hear this. If you have a friend that would really needs to hear this, send this to them, and I will be eternally grateful for that. Also, I just want to remind you too, I have chakra consults if you like, or crystal grids as well. If you go to divinejourneyboutique.com, you can type in the search bar for chakra consult and that will come up, or crystal grids, that downloadable will also come up. I'm so happy that you came and spent some time with me. I will see you next time. That was fun, wasn't it? Thanks for walking through the sacred mess with me. If today's episode made you laugh, cry, or clutch a crystal a little tighter, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review, or share it with your favorite hot mess mystic. You can find more magic, crystal wisdom, and energy healing tools over at divinejourneyboutique.com. And don't forget to say hi on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. Until next time, my beautiful friend, from my sacred mess to yours, I'm sending you grace, love, and light, and a little frankincense for the road. Bye.